This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
Protocol observed. This House believes that establishing tax incentives and subsidies is the most effective means of promoting economic tourism. Dear judges and the August House at large, Team Negative are coming here, bringing claims that they have no proof with, bringing claims that they are not giving us evidence whether what they are talking about it does do exist. Dear judges, they are urging that tax incentives and subsidies is not the most effective means. As we Team Affirmative and the Uganda Investment Authority, we say that there are other alternatives of promoting and establishing and promoting economic tourism. However, we say that the effective mean is one, and is tax incentives and subsidies. Dear judges, they are coming without another alternative, and they are leaving us with no solution onto what should we do. If we leave tax incentives and subsidies, therefore what should we resort to? Dear judges, they are urging in their speeches, and they are telling us that support small businesses is not going to be seen and not going to be recognized in using tax incentives and subsidies. But dear judges, we are telling you that when we do exercise and establish tax incentives and subsidies, we are going to see that small businesses that do exist right now in Uganda are going to expand, and new businesses are going to be formulated due to the tax incentives and subsidies. Dear judges, they are talking about the infrastructures. Yes, indeed, but using the subsidies that the government is going to provide, since these are funds and these are financial funds that are provided by the government to organizations or individuals and businesses to develop. Dear judges, we are going to develop the infrastructure thus that we attract more investors and other people who are going to come. Dear judges, using the tax incentives and subsidies, Uganda was ranked 4th in the recent campaign in the recent conference that was in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, in United Arab Emirates. Dear judges, what helped us to be ranked number 4? It was the tax incentives and subsidies that were provided by the government and the investors that are developing our economic tourism. Dear judges, we are Team Affirmative, and we are telling them that the attracting of investments is going to open up new businesses, expand the current businesses, and still the 70% of our natives are going to benefit, since are going to be the first beneficiaries as the employees. Still, when we are constructing the infrastructure using the subsidies that the government is going to provide, we are going to see that 70% of the raw materials used in the construction of those infrastructure is going to be got from the country. And also, the first consumers of the government of the economic tourism sector, as we are developing and developing the infrastructure, are going to be natives. Wages that are 70% are going to be consumed by the 70% of the natives who are employed. Dear judges, let's not look at the failures of tax incentives as they are saying that there is corruption. We told them that we have the United Nations who is going to fund us through their branch of the United Nations Development Account, which is going to be supervised by Sir Alexander Teperkov. Due to the supervision, there is no way that we are going to find fraud in the amounts of money that is going to be funded during the establishment and implementation. Dear judges, we, the Uganda Investment Authority, we are implementers. We are going to make sure that if we love our country, and this is the power of Africa, if we want to go forward, there is no way we can't fight to see that we have the best economic tourism. Since tourism sector contributes a lot to the country, we are saying that whereby we had a debt and we had a burden during the pandemic of COVID-19 in 2019, the tourism sector came in and contributed a $1.6 billion, which was used to recover those debts and the burdens that were brought up.
Okay, so panel, what we particularly failed to get from Team Affirmative is part of all proof. Now, first of all, they failed to prove to us that there is going to be improvement in the tourism industry after the tax incentives and subsidies have been provided on their side. Now, particularly what you get from our side is showing you necessarily how the tax incentives and subsidies have particularly failed in the long run, and how necessarily they're not going to encourage, let's say, growth, and they're not going to encourage economic tourism in the long run. What you first of all get as a clash in this debate is transparency and accountability versus corruption. We feel like there is no transparency and accountability on their side, and there's a lot of corruption on their side, whereby we provide for you at transparency and accountability. First of all, we question their source of funding and their source of provision, whereby Uganda was already kicked out of the United Nations, whereby the United Nations' funding body is actually the World Bank, so they can't actually get any form of funding from the World Bank, which is under the United Nations, when the World Bank is actually no longer part of Uganda's funding providers. Now, we feel like they also failed to show us how they are going to, prevent, poor usage of the resources or poor usage of the income that's being given, or prevent, cheating. But first of all, what you get from my second speaker is examples of companies such as Game that have failed to pay back debts and have actually cheated, and also a statistic that 63% of Ugandan industries have avoided debts or repatriations after being offered tax incentives. Examples such as Kajansi Clayworks and Game, which have actually failed in the long run, and they've actually not actually been followed up by the government. We feel like therefore they need to have a form of accountability in the long run on their side, which they fail to prove to us. Particularly then you also get self-sustainability versus over-dependence. They show us that they are going to actually have, foreign aid in the long run, and they are going to actually continue with what we call neo-colonialism, where they are going to continue over-dependence. We showed them an example of Uganda already depending on a country such as China and having a high debt in China, whereby Uganda hasn't yet paid back a particularly very high debt to China, and the government is therefore still lacking enough funds to actually pay back that debt. So therefore there is not going to be enough money to actually carry out incentives in the long run. We also show them diversification versus stagnancy. There's not going to be diversification or promoting of creativity and innovation in the long run on their side, whereby the major point of the entire resolution is to show you that we are going to be economic tourism through promoting of creative economy. By promoting creativity, we show you that we are setting up import substitution industries, and we are going to use circles to actually get the income to start up these import substitution industries, such as, for example, Eco Stove, which are climate sustainable and actually helping the youth use their creativity and innovation skills to actually raise money and set up industries and stop depending on imports that actually tax at a high rate, to help the government actually reduce the money they spend on imports, but actually use that money to actually develop the infrastructure in the country. We particularly then prove to them that the infrastructure development won't exist on their side because there's not enough money, and there's going to be corruption in the long run of the resources by the industries, and due to these industries not being followed up well, rather than carrying out construction and carrying out proper usage of the resources, there's going to be improper utilization, and in the long run what you're going to have as a benefit on our side is that there's going to be short-term benefit of immediate construction of these, roads, infrastructure by these people who are going to be employed, such as unskilled labor, and there's also going to be education of these through vocational training of these unskilled labor in the long run, to actually prove to you that we are going to develop the country through creative economy, whereby the tourists don't actually come because there's reduced taxation, but they actually come because there's creativity in the long run and innovation in businesses which have actually thrived on their own. For example, a country such as Singapore that thrived on investing in its agricultural economy. This is particularly just an example and not actually getting out of their parameters. A country such as Singapore that actually used the creative industry to actually gain income and actually account for their own resources without relying on foreign aid, or actually without providing any incentives to any of these import substitution industries that they had set up. We prove to you that these import substitution industries are going to actually make more income than has actually been made by tax incentive.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.